Yeah, just turn off my phone. I don't need one, I have one, but maybe leave it here so the late comers.
Oh, that's a good idea. If anyone comes late, sometimes that happens, you know. Okay,
You can start.
ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, everyone, thank you for coming and coming out. And I know it's a busy week and Erev Shabbos, and you know it's not so easy to get first year on Erev Shabbos. Before we actually start, I just want to take off my watch. That's the most important thing. I mean, to see what time it is. Before we actually start, I want to say a few words of introduction about the shir. I'll tell you that in preparing for these, I do not know exactly why I volunteered to give these shiurim, quite frankly, on such a fraught topic. It's like there was really something that sort of compelled me to do this, and but also the whole week I was walking, like I thought about this when I woke up, and I thought about it when I went to sleep, and I thought about it while I was like driving carpool, and I thought about it. Well, I was like, oh, what. You know, these are very, very serious topics, and it's more than that. I think that we have now spent years, literally years, discussing these topics. So the thought of what's there to add or what's there to say different, it's not that I think that I have something to say that's different. It's just a little bit. I think that we can use a regrouping. I think that a lot of what we'll discuss might even be things that everyone's heard and learned before. Again, this has been a very big topic over the past number of years. So I want to explain the following few things I think that are important to know. First, I'll just start with a personal story. I want to tell you about the worst year I ever gave. When I was like a young teacher, I was still in my 20s for sure. I got invited to give a shiur in Teaneck, New Jersey. I don't remember exactly what it was on, but I remember it was on Sefer Yoshua. And it was like a real crash and experience. And it wasn't that I wasn't prepared, and it wasn't that I hadn't like looked up all my things. I did. It's just I walked in like it was my first time ever really giving a shul in a place like Teaneck. And for someone like me who grew up in a very small community, I was like, Teaneck, they all know Kol HaTorah Kula in Teaneck. Like every person living in Teaneck was Kol HaTorah. And now I'm going to come in and I'm this like little kid basically, and I'm giving this shiur on Sefer Yoshua, and what am I going to say? And are people going to be bored? And what are they? I was just so in my head. I really learned a lesson because it was terrible. I'm telling you, it was terrible. And I'm going to be honest about the fact that I'm a little bit in my head about this topic as well, because I think, like I said, it's such a fraught topic. So I do want to share just 4 technical points. Let's start with okay. I'll do a Mir Tashem for the sheets for Monday. I meant to put my phone number in the sheets.
Or at least your name. I noticed your name's not even on it.
Oh, I never put my name on it. I mean, it's not, I never think to do it. It's not on purpose. Karen Hochhauser. Hi. Right. So I did forget to put my email or my WhatsApp on the sheets. And the reason why I'm happy to just give out my number right now. I mean, if anyone, whatever, or Melissa has my phone number. I'm not hard to find.
We're on WhatsApp with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's fine. Okay. So, right. So I'm not a hard person to find, I'm not a secret agent. But the part of the reason why I specifically wanted to give my phone number is because I think that this topic really will lend itself to maybe a lot of one-on-one conversations, but not group conversations. Meaning, what are we not doing? I am not even for 1 second going to talk about who's right and who's wrong. That first of all, even if I thought I had an answer to that question, that's certainly not my place. That's definitely not what's going to be happening. But I also want to be honest and say I have my own biases and my own feelings, very strong feelings about a lot of different things that are going on. And I think that when anyone tries to give a shiur and say over Torah, it's really not about the person who's the one who's speaking. It's about the Torah and the Amito Shel Torah and this is not about me. So I'm trying to do my best to not let any of my personal thoughts or biases, and rather to like just give us what to think about. But I was thinking maybe that would lend itself to more one-on-one conversation. And the last thing I'll say in terms of introduction, and then we can hop right in, is that I really look at these two shiurim as like a unit together. And in tonight, the goal is that what I really just want to discuss and almost like diagnose some of the broader issues, which we'll see are not like particularly new issues. And then number two, maybe talk about possible avenues for shalva and achdut and ava, because I think that our neshamas right now, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's someone living like the most, Haredi, Chiloni, in the middle, whatever anyone wants to call each other. I think that the neshamas of all of Am Yisrael right now are heavy. Like they're just heavy, because when there's imu, when there's unpleasantness, when there's fighting, when it just affects the soul. And we know that Chazal teach us that to get nevuah, a person has to have simcha. You can't be a navi unless you're sameach, unless you're happy. So none of us are neviot, of course. But as we all sit here in the geula, I said to my son, I called him and I was like, tell me something beautiful. I have something from Rav Kook, but he not from him. But when I called him and I was like, tell me something about this and the beginning of the geula. And then he gave me some mussar, because he was like, Ima, Rav Kook does not think this is the beginning of the geula. He thinks this is the geula. Like we're already in the geula. You can't say we're at the beginning of the geula. So okay, I took the mussar. But the point is that wherever we are in this process called the geula, it's difficult. And we know that we have the chevle Mashiach and the birth pangs of Mashiach. And, if for any woman who's ever had the bracha of giving birth, it's like those pains are very real. And it's not that even though with all the hormones after you give birth and you're like, this is amazing and we're babies, so beautiful. Like most people right after they give birth are not like, let's do a do-over, because the pain is a very real thing. And right now, each and every one of us, I think our neshamot are pains, and it's a very difficult time. So with all that having been said, let's dive in and talk about a little some of the issues that are going on. And because we have this nice, I was very excited about the thought of getting to sit around the table. So if anyone has a thought or a question, whatever, jump in. And for people who are watching, I'll try to remember to repeat if anyone has a thought or a question.
Too, because I have a mic.
Melissa's very thin.
My gosh, Melissa, you are so cool. Do you have a microphone? Okay. Really neat. Wow. Okay. Wow. I don't know if it's and also I'm like the least tech. So this is to me, wow, it's like science fiction movie. Okay. So we're going to start with a paragraph. It's the only paragraph I didn't give a title to because it's for Mariv. But the paragraph, just let's talk about, let's reset our buttons and let's remember what we are and what we're all about, right? And we say when we daven Mariv, Avat Olam Be'Yisrael Amcha Ahavta, Torah Mitzvot Chukim Mishpatim Otanu Limanata. That, what does it mean, Avat Olam? It means like an everlasting love that Hashem gave to all of Am Yisrael, this everlasting love. And what did he do? He gave Torah, Mitzvot, Chukim, Mishpatim. He taught us all of that. That's our foundation as a nation. And what do we do when we b'shachmenu uvkumenu nasim b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed? Right? We're supposed to have simcha when we are involved in Torah, forever and ever. We got one sheet, right? And if you want a sheet, come on. Okay. And then, and how come? Because we have this magnificent sentence. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I'll tell you one short story about myself, and then I'll stop talking about myself. Like when I was an NCSY and growing up, and at like an NCSY Shabbaton, at the ends, like when you were davening Motzei Shabbos Mariv, I remember always as a kid, and like a kid who was really trying to grow in Torah and mitzvot, always spending a lot of time. And I find it such a beautiful line. There's chayenu ve'orech yamenu uvahem nehege yomam v'layla, because Torah is supposed to be our life. Torah is supposed to be our life. It's supposed to be what we're involved in all day, every day. And we ask Hashem not to remove that from us. And I think that what all of us around the table, this gives me so much thought because, you know, I think the first thing we have to think about is, do we really feel that way? Do we really feel that way? Not us versus anyone else, just us. Like if someone, I was talking to a friend the other day and she said, it's interesting. I'm not talking about the protest culture in Israel, which is like very popular. But like lowercase p protest. Like if someone came to my house and said, like, go back to the time of like the Hanukkah story. If someone came to my house and knocked on my door and said, Karen Hochhauser, we are saying you are not allowed to learn Torah anymore. How much would I care? Would I like sit on my couch and cry? Would I say, oh gosh, that's annoying because like I really invested a lot in this lifestyle? Would it be something in between? But like, how much would it bother me? How much would it bother my children? How much bother, spouse? How much would it bother our community? And I think the answer to that is it would bother us a lot, but certainly on a communal level. But as individuals, when we stop and think about, like when we walk around our day, do we say like Kihem chayenu ve'orech yamenu, that Torah is what our whole life is about, right? Some of you who I've learned with before know I love the pasuk Ka'ayal ta'arog al afikei mayim, kein nafshi ta'arog elecha elokim. That like David HaMelech, when he's writing Sefer Tehillim, he talks about a thirst for Hashem that's like an ayal at that stream, just like needing to like, drink up all that water with such thirst. When I wake up in the morning, do I open my eyes and say like, wow, I am so lucky because today I get to have a day of Torah Mitzvot. Today I get to have a day of Avodah Hashem. Today I get to have a day where I live in Eretz Israel and also Medina Israel. Today I get to have a day where I learn Torah or teach Torah. I don't know. I think even that is a complicated question. How do we feel about our relationship to Torah? And, in Sefer Tehillim, the second parak that I brought here is, wait, hold on, time out. You could raise your hands if you're at home too. Did anyone here, if you're like around my age, did anyone here who went to Stern College take Tehillim with Mordechai Cohen? Yeah, it's classic, amazing. Oh, yeah. I took it in Stern and a rebel. And it was very different, actually. It's very manyan. Right, good. Okay, so you probably remember learning this parak with Rabbi Cohen. That Rabbi Cohen. What? Okay, well, I'll tell you something. I knew that what I wanted to was in my notebook, and I looked it up last night in my notebook from Rabbi Cohen's class. Yeah. So,
He's
like
this.
Bigger,
I think in like 2 weeks.
Rabbi Cohen?
Yeah.
No.
You're like Yemei Shemesh?
His niece is marrying my nephew.
Wow.
You're what?
Yeah.
You're so cool. Listen, it's a cool first second. No, but I wanted I feel like I should. First of all, obviously.
Yes.
Second of all, you literally could advertise it like Stern, like majored in Rabbi Cohen.
I also
Right?
I used to say that all the time.
Groupies of Rabbi Cohen, and then he'll talk about things like Robert Alter and the Anchor Bible, and the Ravid and his use of poetry. Okay, I'm very excited. Okay, like this. So now back to where we are. Torah. So like this in Perek Kuf Lamed Aleph of Tehillim. So it's the shortest parak in Tehillim. 3 psukim. Shir Hamalu LeDavid. Hashem lo gava libi v'lo ramu inai v'lo hilachti b'gdolot u'v'niflaot mimeni. What does David HaMelech say? He says, Hashem, I was not haughty. I did not raise up my eyes. Right? I didn't do things that were like, I wasn't too big for my britches, so to speak. And we all know, I remember Rabbi Cohen saying in class, he was like, that idea, like he's protesting too much. And he said, what does it mean that David HaMelech felt that he had to sit down and he had to write a parak of Sefer Tehillim saying, Hashem, I did this, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do this? It means that somewhere inside him, he said, I did it a little. And how he's feeling about that. So I found this wild Malbim. This is like really a little bit of an esoteric Malbim, because what the Malbim likes to do in his like style and his Perush is that the Malbim really looks at every word, and he thinks even in Nach, not just in Torah, like each word, each phrase is saturated with its own meaning. So he really does, he's like dissecting every word. So let's do the Malbim together here. The Malbim says, by the way, I like to always give like a drop of history. The Malbim lived in the 19th century. So Shir Malot, Mevaer Ich Samuch B'chol Enyanav Al Hashem, right? Hashem lo gava libi, gvahot halev mitzayin she'over hagvul, sorry, v'chavtzo u'tshukotav. So like this. What does it mean, gava libi? It means that I've like passed a boundary that I'm not allowed to cross. Like I've overstepped. And David HaMelech is saying, I didn't overstep, not bein b'kamut, not bein b'ichud, not in quantity and not in quality. Okay? And then he gives a few examples. L'mashal, mi shechafetz liyot ke'achad mimalachei marom, עובר גבול התשוקה באיחוד. מי שחפץ שיהיה לו גבורה מופלגת יותר מן הגבול, עובר גבול התשוקה בקלות. Basically says, if you want to be like one of the Malachei Hasharit, you're overstepping your boundaries in like your quality. And if you're overstepping if you want to be like the strongest guy on earth, you're overstepping your boundaries in like, so to speak, quantity. Meaning, I can go to the roof of this building and be like, I'm Superwoman, I'm going to fly off the roof. We all know what's the end of that story is going to be. Not a good idea, right? And to even think that I could try to like defy gravity, it's not wicked. I can like try to defy gravity and do that. That's me overstepping my boundaries as a human being. And then David HaMelech goes on and he says, V'lo ramu enai, rom enai mitzayin ha'over hagvul b'seichel ha'yuni. Then he talks about what does it mean, lo ramu enai, and I'll explain how this ties in a second. Like I sort of didn't lift my eyes like up. I wasn't haughty. And he talks about the seichel iyuni and the seichel ma'asi. And the seichel iyuni from the word ayin means in the intellectual realm. Like I didn't look at the world around me and say, I see, I know, I understand. I have the answer. And he also says, I didn't do it in the ma'asi, in the emotional, in the late. This feels right to me. This feels wrong to me. I was helping a woman, I'm a yoetza and I was helping a woman with like who was just like having some issues in spotting and whatever. And she kept saying to me, I feel like I'm Tamea. She was not Tamea. I feel like I'm Tamea. Over and over. Finally, I said to her, it's someone I know well. So I was able to joke around with her a little bit. And I was like, listen, facts and feelings don't always agree with feelings, right? But that's the point. When a person says, but I feel like I am something, I feel like I am, and they're sure, that's also overstepping a boundary. And what David HaMelech is saying is I did not do that, Hashem. And when I read this Malbim, I was thinking, wow, but could I say I have not done that, Hashem? That I haven't looked around at what's going on in the world. And it's not even just in our own beautiful Medina Israel, right? The world right now is a like really, crazy place, you know? Like I have I'm an opinionated person. I have a lot of opinions. So could I go to Hashem like David HaMelech and say, I didn't do this. I didn't like overstep on my seichel iyuni. I didn't overstep on my seichel masi. I'm not so sure I can say that, right? And so if we take now these first couple of things that we've looked at, right? What's going to be our baseline? Our baseline is to remember. And I really believe this. I'm going to say something and now like at least like, I don't know, X% of the room is going to say, but I want everyone to take that word out for a second, okay? Most people in the world, not every person, Hashem, there are Rashem in the world, there are bad people in the world, there are crazy people in the world, most people in the world are doing the best they can. And most people in the world are trying to bring good to the world. And what's the part of the challenge is that we don't always agree on how to bring the most good into the world. But most people want to bring it to the world. And some people say the best way to do it is this. In some ways, it's best way. It's almost like, I'm not so into this, but I can appreciate it for what it is. Like the love languages, you know what I'm talking like I'm sure some people are very, it's great, it's beautiful, it's whatever, it's just like different strokes, different folks. Like it's the same thing as the love languages. I have to respect the love languages around the people, like of the people around me, even though I think that like I might be like, this makes no sense. Some of my like love languages, so to speak, I know that my husband is like, he's just like, okay, I guess so. I'll do what you want. If it makes you happy. Okay, that's great. We all try to do the best we can. But trying to do the best we can also means being able to say, Lo gava libi, velo ramu enai. That just because I see something in some way and it makes sense to me, that I can be able to like step away from it and understand that it's not necessarily the absolute. And I brought for you, and by the way, this is where I got the title this year. This magnificent title was not from my own head. I brought a beautiful piece from Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb, who was the president of Yeshiva University starting in the mid-1970s. And this is a piece he wrote from 2001. By the way, if you haven't been on the website, the Lamb Legacy, like you know how for Rabbi Sachs, there's a Rabbi Sachs Legacy website. There's also it's amazing. You could just sit there forever and read because everything Rabbi Lamb had to say was like so just incredible, profound. Yes, that's exactly the right word, profound. So I brought just a little bit of a very, very long piece that he gave, and we'll read a little bit together, okay? So he quotes first John Kenneth, I'm sorry, I'm just reading English out loud. I don't know how else to do this. John Kenneth Galbraith, one of America's enduring intellectuals, once wrote that all of the great leaders have had one characteristic in common: the willingness to confront unequivocally major anxiety of people in their time. To be a good leader, you have to be able to manage what is making people anxious and scared. And where do we see the best example of that, by the way? In our own homes. Like I am awesome mom. The other day, yesterday, 2 days ago, we went to the Hermon. We took like a hooky day and we went to the Hermon. Okay. Right? We had fun. So it is so easy to be the best mom ever in the Hermon. Right? You're like, not with little kids. I have big kids. This is my youngest, right? So like you're there and you're like, oh, sure, we'll pack good snacks and everyone's having a good time. And so that's easy. When is it not easy? Oh my gosh, but I wanted to wear that shirt and now I don't have the right shirt, or I have a test, or there's no food in the thing. What is all that? That's everyone's, and Ima, right? And Baruch Hashem for all those Imas. But what is that? That is everyone's anxiety saying, Ima, I need you to help. You need to step up and be the leader because I can't be the leader of my own life right now. And then it's really hard to be a good leader in our own homes. So now Rabbi Lamb says, so to be a leader of Am Yisrael, like, or in the world, like, ooh la la, you have to do that in spades. And he says, and by the way, this is crazy because it's from 2001. Here we are. By the way, 2001, I feel like was 2 minutes ago, but it's not because it's 2026. So fine. What then is the major anxiety of our generation of Jews? And he says 3 things. Number 1 is the security for the state. Number 2 is to prevent the spiritual demise of our people by bringing them under the wings of Torah. In other words, Kira. Number 3, the third is to keep all Jews as one people, to halt the unraveling of a people. That phrase, the unraveling, is so magnificent. Because if you think about what he's doing there with that metaphor, it's not just like if all the different groups of Am Yisrael never talk to each other again, that would be like sad or bad. It's like literally taking something that is so completely intertwined that to pull it apart would be excruciatingly painful. I have, friends who go through divorce and divorce for like the right reason. I mean, I'm not judging, but I'm saying like, sometimes a person needs to get divorced. And anytime I was able to sort of see or watch or give support, I had the same thought each time. Like, even if this was the right decision, the good decision, the couple was shalom with it, with dignity, with respect. You know what it is to unravel a marriage? It's like every picture has like the two of you in it. It's like every memory is a shared memory. It's like you're looking at the things you got for your wedding. You're looking at the dishes and the cabinet. You're looking at, whatever it is. Some like baseball hat you got at a game. It's an unraveling. It's not just like, okay, we shared a pizza, you take half, I take half. To unravel Am Yisrael because we can't get along would be the most devastating thing in the history, I think, of the world. And I was thinking when I was listening to the Hesped of Shira, the sister of Ran Guili. So I'll quote one line that she said in the Hesped. And we were just talking about this before, actually. It's like, it was interesting to hear a younger kid, maybe not 100% get this. She said, Hatzchokim shalanu, haravim shalanu, nigmeru. V'nish'ar zichronot. So our laughter, our joking around together, also our fighting. Like it's all, I only have memories. And she's not just like mourning the time that she had with her brother that was like fun and good and chill and great. She was mourning the fighting. Why? And you said to me, why the fighting? Why would anyone mourn the fighting? Like because fighting is life. Fighting means you care about something. And again, Baruch Hashem, that in our houses, hopefully, the fighting is about something like, but I wanted the last cookie. That's great. It's easy. But it shows I care about the cookie and you care about the cookie. So we're going to go to war about the cookie. We fight when we have things that we care about. We fight when we have things that we feel are worth fighting for. And what is the challenge is that, again, we can't figure out how to sort of divide it or how to utilize it or how to deal with each other's anxieties in a way that will make the other one feel that we care, right? We all know sometimes, again, with kids, it's just so much fodder from our kids, Baruch Hashem. But like, if one kid comes in and they're like screaming at another kid, sometimes I wish I could just like say to the one who's being screamed at, just ask them if anything happens. Like, just say, are you okay? Before screaming back. Just say, are you okay? Did something happen in school today? Did you have a fight with a friend? Did the teacher yell at you? Did you forget to do your homework? Did you leave your lunch at home? But I don't often do that. And by the way, as a mom, I also often do that, right? Not nearly as much as I should. But that idea of like saying, are you okay? Because you're coming in swinging. There must be something important here and there must be something going on. And Rabbi Lamb says, here indeed we come to the great, oh, sorry, 1 second. I don't want to skip the next part. In more normal times, Saadia Gaon was able to emphasize Torah as the essence of our nationhood. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi wrote of Israel as chief value. But today, the love of Torah and the love of Israel are in conflict. The love of Torah and the love of Israel are in conflict. Here indeed we come to the greatest test of a leader, his ability to handle the element of tragedy that inheres in the whole enterprise of leadership, especially Jewish leadership. By tragedy, I mean the need to reject one good in the face of a higher good, or to accept one evil as the lesser of two evils. Leadership involves making hard decisions, or better, dirty decisions, choosing between alternatives, neither of which is perfect or clean or pure or desirable or even acceptable, but selecting the one which is the least harmful. So in our case, we must forget neither the Almighty and his Torah nor his Jews, wherever they are, no matter what their condition. We must love each other unconditionally, even if the two loves sometimes seem to conflict with each other. We may give preference now to one and now to the other, but we never do we abandon either of them. And I was thinking a lot in my own personal like cheshbon hanefesh here about, again, this is where it gets a little sticky and tricky, because I'm going to say something and I'm not assuming that anyone thinks the way I think, and it's not their personal thoughts. I think sometimes it's like, okay, but like we might say, well, we solved for that. It's not Torah Israel, it's Torah Israel. It's not like we have the Hesder system and we have like the Tilumia system, and we have a compromise. Like we solved for that. But the thing is that I think we have to ask ourselves, do we really suffer that? And Rabbi Lamb goes on and he quotes Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who talks about, when you say Shema, the ayin in Shema is big, right? How come it's big? So Rav Hirsch explains that the ayin is big so no one could ever make a mistake and think it's an aleph. Because if you take the word Shema and you switch out the ayin to an aleph, you get the word Shema. What's Shema? Like maybe lest, right? And he says that Shema means like listen. There's a principle here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Bnei Israel, I need you to understand that I am the one who runs the world. There, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But imagine if we had this concept of Shema, meaning that like it's wishy-washy. We can't be wishy-washy. And sometimes I wonder, and again, I think about this myself, is when you make a compromise is part of leadership. But when we make a compromise, are we also sometimes being wishy-washy on some of these principles that are so important to us in our big life? That doesn't be compromising. It just means that maybe it opens up a door for room to say, wow, but where do I compromise and where am I not willing to compromise? And where maybe do I have brothers and sisters who also compromise and also don't compromise, but where they do it might be a little different than when I do it. What do I have to learn from them? What do they have to learn? What do they have to learn from me? But when we're able to really appreciate that idea of understanding that we have a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety about the issues that are going on around us today because we care about them so much. And I don't just mean because they're political, I mean because it's obviously very personal. But to understand that we're living in a time where two things that shouldn't be in conflict sometimes are in conflict, and to again understand like what's our Shema with an ayin and what's our Shema with an aleph is very important. And if you turn the page, okay, here's where I got in trouble. What's the problem? When make a sheet, you always try to make things sort of a little bit more snippets. Everything here is so amazing, so I cut out as much as I could, but we're gonna fly through it because I'm also watching the clock. Okay, first things first. Today, I said to myself, I was looking for like an idea, a story. I felt like I didn't quite like hit the bullseye on something. So I called Rav Judah Michelle. I know him for many, many years. And I said to him, I didn't call him. I WhatsApp voice noted him, let's be honest. And I said, Judah, like what, I'm giving a share on this. Like, tell me something. So he pointed, but he told me a story I want to share before we read it, because it's connected. He said that Rav Kook, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen, that he was with a delegation of Rabbanim who went to visit like new settlements in the north of Israel, right? That's like they went. And it was actually a little bit controversial because the Rabbanim went and some were like, like certain communities said, what are you going up to those like Chiloni Yeshuvim and why are you doing that? And it was a whole controversial thing. And then they get to this particular Yeshuv and there's like nothing there. Like there's not a single mezuzah on any door. There's no minyan on Yom Kippur, literally a spiritual wasteland. And they're sitting in like the Chadar Ochel, and one of the like kibbutzinim gets up and starts screaming like you came here and you tried to like, kfiyat datit and you're trying to coerce us. And Rav Kook says, Lo banu lahashpia banu liot mushpa'im. Like we didn't come to influence. We came to be influenced because you are here and you're building up, the land of Israel with your bare hands. And there's a story that there were, they had guards, of course, by all these Yeshuvim, and they were dressed like Arabs. I thought that I don't think I knew that. I thought that was a really interesting nugget, like that they dressed like Arabs because that was like part of the just, subtle, whatever. So Rav Kook says to one of these guards, switch clothes with me. Like I'll wear your whole like Arab getup and you switch and you put on my like rabbi clothes. So I don't know, the guy thought it was like, okay, that's funny. And they switch clothes. And they start dancing and singing the Tahir Libino Lav the Chavemet, and the whole place gets into it and rocking, the whole thing. Amazing. And there's sort of this like Nahafochu moment as we're heading into like getting close with Purim in the air already. And Rav Kook said at the end of this, he looked at all the people and he said, I'm not embarrassed to wear this. you shouldn't be embarrassed to wear Torah and mitzvot. And he actually said, I'm not going to take off these clothes until you tell me that the same way that you're willing to like literally give up your life to guard the lands of Israel, that you should understand that it's also important to guard your soul, to guard your neshama. And like as the story goes, the whole place now, all these like, Chiloni, Kibbutznikim, everyone's crying and they're saying to Rivka, of course. And it was this beautiful moment of how they switched clothes. So that's a little bit the Hakdama, okay? So he says like this. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read it fast and paraphrase, okay? So he says, he talks about how there's like two groups. We've divided ourselves in this piece into two camps, Charedim and Choshim. Okay. People who are Haredi, they're like trembling before God for Torah and mitzvot, and people are Choshim. They feel free. I'm in the second paragraph. He says, I'll start with the underlines. Okay, he says like a person might say to himself, "Ani hineni mimachan hazeh." I'm from this camp. Hasheni omer gamu. Ani hineni mimachan hazeh, and I'm from that camp. B'kol chad ve'achad hu merutzeh amdato. Everyone's happy with where they are. Harehu sotem et haderech shel hatikun v'shel hishtalmut mishnei hatzadim. When a person says, "I belong to camp X and I'm good there," that's good. I don't want to be part of your camp. It already closes the door for any type of like rhetoric, and dialogue. And he goes on. Oh, thank you, Melissa. And he goes on to hold on one second. I'm just peeking at the time and seeing where I can skip. I'm sorry. I'll read just whatever. Ha-chared, klamar, mishu choshev et atzmo shehu shayach lemachane zeh shekarim lo charedim, harehu mabit habata milamala lamata el hamachane sheni hachoshim. Like in the person who puts himself at the camp of the charedim, he sees a guy from the choshim up and down. He gives him like, my kids would call it side eye. Okay, and he says, "Uvema shenogea lemachshavot shel tikun shel chipus maasim v'shel truva halo miyad hu sholeach skirat ayin el hamachane sheni homei lefanav b'chol me'eromav me'toru mitzvot v'hu choshev b'dato she'atshuva b'melo muvnek halo sham hi drusha." Right? That basically, what is he? What does he say? I'm part of this camp. I'm very proud of what I am. And I look at you. And if you would just fix the problem, if you would just not be how you are, that would solve the whole problem. And then, of course, he goes on and he says, and the person in the Choshi camp looks at the Haredi camp and says, if you would only, then the whole thing would be fine. Okay? Now, again, I think this is an idea that we've heard many, 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 many times. But then he goes on to say that's only the first part of the problem. And again, I give you the whole thing. You could read it at home. You could call me. I'll do it with you if you want. If it's, if you don't have the Hebrew. But he says there's also basically like we build a wall between us. It's not just that we disagree with each other. It's that we disagree with each other, and then we essentially build this wall that makes the dialogue and the coming towards each other basically impossible. And I'm going to go down to, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. Okay, it's a paragraph that's basically totally underlined. What he says, what's the only thing we can do? We really have to get rid of the names. We really have to get rid of the labels. Or in other words, like the story, what do we need to do? We need to switch clothes. We need to switch clothes. Because as long as I keep myself in one camp and you keep yourself in another camp, and he goes on to talk about how the concept of a tzibur, of a congregation, a tzibur is comprised of tzaddikim and beinonim and rishayim. When every single shul in the entirety of Judaism, I think, even like non-Orthodox shuls, I believe, say Kol Nidre. I'm sure not some of the like really fringy sects of Judaism, but the main one, right? Say Kol Nidre. Right? And what do we do when we're saying Kol Nidre before? And we're talking about, we're davening with the Abaryanim, and we know, and we spend the entirety of Kol Nidre talking about how we have done the wrong thing, which means sometimes I'm a sinner. And we also say, Hashem, like any zechuyot that I've earned, that I have, wow, I need those. I need those to be part of my tally in Shamayim. So that means I'm also a saint sometimes. And then what are we most of the time? We know, Chazal tell us, most people are Benoni. They're in the middle. And that's why we use Aseret Yemei Tshuva to try to tip the scales, to push us to the scale of tzidkus. But that means that literally 100% of people walking the face of the earth are an amalgamation of tzidkus, Benoni, and Rishus. All three. So when we talk about a tzibor, that means that we're all everything. And Rav Kook says, so why do we need these, like, what's the labels? Now, a more practical person might say, but you need labels. Labels are helpful. You know, if you have 2 canisters of white things in your, in your kitchen, and you are appreciative of the fact that one has a label that says salt and one has a label that says sugar, because we don't want to mix them up. So I don't want to, it's not that I'm trying to say, like, let's be outlandish and just like, we'll all mush together. This is not like John Lennon, imagine all the people and we get rid of everything and everyone should be the same. That's its own problem. But maybe here we are, 2026, the struggle is so high that we forgot that we're all part of one tzibor. And in that story, where they switched clothes, they were able to see themselves in that way. And when we project our problems onto just if you would only, that does not get to a good place. My husband always says, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Now, I'll tell you a secret. For anyone who knows me, it's not a secret. I actually would rather be right. I'd much rather be right than happy. But I have learned that, like, that is not a good way to live. You know what I'm saying? But if you're asking me, like, in my kishkas, oh, I love to be right.
That's what makes you happy.
That is what makes me happy. Even when we went to this trip to the Hamon, which I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit fetching and cranky about, and we're going to go, and it's like so much driving, it's the kids, I was going to be cranky. Like, I was like a little bit of a negative Nancy about this trip. And then we get there, and it's like so awesome. And I go over to my husband, I was like, I am going to give you an amazing gift right now. Like, I am going to give you the greatest gift. And I forgot what he said. He guessed what it was, but I was like, no, it's even better. And he looks at me because he knows me, and he's like, I was like, it's 4. Wait, you're allowed to say now the 4 most fun words to say ever. The 4 most words to say ever. Okay? Because that is what I would want to say. That I told you, though. Those are the 4 words. But you know what he did? He looked at me and he said, instead of me saying those 4 words, I'd rather you say a different 4 words. I'm glad I came. And in doing that, what was he able to do? Oh, it's so nice. Okay, don't worry, we fight also. But like in doing that, essentially the like musar I took from that conversation, besides it being so nice, is that he didn't look at me with the label of, oh, Karen, yeah, you'd rather be right. He looked at me and he said, here's an opportunity for both of us to be happy. And imagine if we were able to like take that, and instead of like looking across the road and saying, if only, that we could say, okay, like, let's try to switch clothes for a minute. Let's try to put down the wall for a minute. And again, to go back to some of the things we discussed earlier in this year, the idea of, it's amazing to see what you're passionate about. I'd love to also for you to see what I'm passionate about. Because really, really, we're all working towards the same goal. And I wanted to close because, like, again, and as we like next week, Bezrat Hashem will continue to discuss. But I wanted to just close with one short thing about tefillah, because I think more than anything, this is like a real Eid Ratzon that we're in these times. Like, I don't know. I remember a few years before Corona, thought something like, wow, my grandparents lived through so much, and my great-grandparents lived through so much. My grandmother was on the kinder transport. My grandfather was on the Chalutzim. Like, they lived through so much. My great-grandparents escaped the Nazis on like the last boat out of Europe. Like, they went to both sets of my grandparents landed in America. They were immigrants in Washington Heights, and they like scraped together, and they didn't have a lot of money. They lived through so much, and I remember being like, I don't know, what did I live through? The 80s? Like sprayed bangs and like Kelly Kapowski on Saved by the Bell? Like, what was like, I don't know, like what, it's sort of boring. I guess that's a good thing. And then all of a sudden, like sorry, I learned Hashem, right? And then it was like Corona, and it was like the war, and it was all the things. So we're living through our own tsaris, and like this tsaris, every day we get closer and closer to the Gula. So I wanted to share one small thing from Reb Chaim Mivolozhin, right? In the Nefesh HaChaim, the Nefesh HaChaim was Reb Chaim Mivolozhin's seminal work. He lived from 1749 to 1821, and just to give like a context, he was a big student of the Vilna Gaon. So he says like this. He says, 1 second. Let's start like halfway through that first sentence that he talks about when a person davens. What are you supposed to do when you daven? Shaklal kavanata hu lechavein rak lahosif koach b'kedusha shekmo she'ish me'anshei hachayil mashliach kol inyano v'tzarchei atzmo mineged umoser nafsho b'rtzono rak al kavod hamelech. Like when we're supposed to go to the mat when we daven. Right? When the same way that the soldier is giving everything for the king, right? We're really supposed to give everything to bring in the powers of Kedusha into the world. And he says, what? Oh, sorry, that basically like the soldier is trying to like bring glory to the kingdom that he's fighting for. So then he just finishes and he says, sorry, lashum kol kavanato v'toher machshavato v'tfilato rak lahosif tat koach b'ha'olamot hakadoshim lahavir ruach hatuma min ha'olam v'yitukan olam b'malchuto yitbarach shemo. That essentially, when we daven, we have to be davening Hashem. We want a paradigm shift in the world. There's a lot of tumah in the world right now, and we need a paradigm shift. We're in the era of the Gula. We're in the era of the Gula. The place where we're allowed to have chutzpah, we learn this from Chana. We're allowed to have chutzpah when we daven. We're allowed to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's enough, like enough with all the introductions, enough with the Yichalta, enough with the Chevlei Mashiach. It's time. It is time. And I was reading, I meant to bring it. I like to bring books for show and tell. We have a book called now I forgot the name of the book. If any of you went to the menopause lecture, you'll know 47. This is part of it. Okay. But it's basically a book about like psychology and Torah, well, different issues in psychology and Torah. And in this book, I'm sorry, Lena, next week I'll have it because I think it's very important to say things where you to B'Shem Omro. There was a piece from the Divrei Harim. Now the Chidushay Harim is a commentary on Shas, who a 19th century commentary on Shas, Rav Yitzchak Meir Alter Migur. But he also has Chidushim on the Parsha. So he says like this. I could only get it as like an exact kind of pace, so I'm sorry it's so small. In Parshat Be'er-Chanan, he says, Ein chanun b'kol makon ela lashon manat chinam. What does it mean when it says ba'et chanan, right? That's asking Hashem for a matnat chinam, like sort of a free gift. V'yesh b'shamayim otsar mikol hadvarim sheyesh ba'olam. V'hagadol shebe'otzarot hu otzar matnat chinam. That in Shamayim, where we have the storehouses and the treasury of like all of the incredible things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can give to us, the greatest one are these matnot chinam, like just things that Hashem gives to us just for being. The lama lo notnim lakol me'otzar zeh. Why doesn't Hashem give us all from this, from this like treasury? Mishum shenotnim rak la'ela hayodim be'emet shenitei lahem bechinam. V'rov bnei adam choshvim shema shehem mekablim magia lahem. Because Hashem only gives to us from these manachinam when we understand that he's just giving it to us because we're us. But most of us think that Hashem gives us because we deserve it. Magia li. I worked for this. Kochi v'otzem yadi. It's a party out there. Kochi v'otzem yadi asali atachayel hazeh. Right? I worked for this. I earned this. I deserve it. But we're really, in the eyes of Hashem, sort of like kids doing chores, right? If like one of my and then they're like, you see, Ema, now you should take us out to 110 Burger tomorrow night because like I unload the dishwasher. I will say routinely to my kids, you are so lucky to get the gift. You get like free room and board every day of your life. And even when you're a grown-up, you're going to be able to come back, Bezrat Hashem. Even when you're married, you're going to be able to come back, Bezrat Hashem. You're going to bring your kids here. I'm going to feed and have sugar for you. So lucky. It's amazing. Now, I want my kids to feel like that. We want our kids to feel like that. It feels secure. But when a kid says that, right, what they say? I deserve 110 burger because I did something awesome. And the lesson here, that the Chidushei Arim is teaching us is we are all like those kids to Hashem. He gives us the whole world. He gives us nature. He gives us resources. He gives us a brain. He gives us strength. He gives us talent. He gives us every one of the nisim and niflaot that goes on in the world. And then we do something good. I did a chesed. I should get schar. I built an institution. I get a plaque on the wall, right? I worked hard. I'm struggling with this area, Hashem. Magia li. And so when Moshe Rabbeinu goes, and this is why he brings it back to the part of Hanan, what he's saying is that Moshe Rabbeinu goes to Hashem and says, I don't deserve anything. And this was Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't deserve anything. All I've done in the world is what I'm supposed to do. I don't deserve anything. But wow, Hashem, I hope you give me something. Don't worry, I'm fishing. I'm fishing. So yeah, 1 hour. I'll never go over. That for those of you at home, it's like a little, the little labor out there. So, but said, like, I don't deserve anything, Hashem. So I think that also when we think about all that we don't have and all that is wrong, and there's a lot wrong. Again, the pain is real pain. The sorrow, the tragedy, things that are not, that again, we can use phrases like not fair, not right, whatever the feelings are, these are real feelings and they are important feelings. But we also imagine if we were able to look at each other and say, but look at the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given to all of us. Look at the fact that, like, if tomorrow I realize, oh shoot, I'm missing something for Shabbos, I could run one of like 10 million grocery stores in Beit Shemesh and just have it. Okay, maybe not exactly, but like something that's reasonably close. I could just have it. That if I walk into like hopefully we should all be blessed to only be in a hospital for like a good reason, right? But like if I walk into a hospital and I see every type of Jew, every single type of Jew, and everyone is there, and everyone is getting along, and everyone's doing chesed. And what do we say? Anyone who's ever, and by the way, the Arabs too, right? The Arabs too. Like you walk out of the hospital and you're just like, I wish every like news organization in the world would come hang out in Hadassah or Shaare Zedek. Because that actually
ER waiting room.
that would, right, the ER waiting room.
It's crazy.
That would actually, like, the whole world would function differently. So we can't make that happen because we don't get to be in charge of like the New York Times. But what we can do is in our own hearts and minds, when we walk our neighborhoods and we watch what's going on in our WhatsApps, is that we can say, let's think about this, how we would think about it if you're in the hospital waiting room. Let's try to see the matnot chinam that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. Let's try to understand what those things are. Again, I'm not negating the hard questions, but at least let's, try to appreciate and to daven for each other that we can see more of that, with each other. And I feel certain that if we do that, then we actually can say, Hashem, you see, I'm really davening for everyone. I'm davening that I can learn from people who are passionate about things that maybe I'm not passionate about, right? I'm davening for myself that I don't have gviat inayim and that I am not so sure that my way is the right way, that I can't be open to another way. I'm davening that we understand that each and every one of us, whether it's in our homes or institutions, the community, whatever, has a responsibility for leadership. And that leadership means recognizing and having empathy for each other's anxieties and the tragedy that it would be if we had an unraveling of Klal Yisrael, and the idea that maybe we need to put each other in, each one of us into each other's shoes. And I think if we can do that and we can close our eyes you know, and as our, you know, when we go to sleep every night and as we're like, our heads are hitting the pillow and we can say, wow, ki hem chayenu ve'orech yamenu uvehem nehege yomam v'layla. Now we could say, Hashem, okay, we're ready. Now you just have to bring Mashiach. So
Amen.
to be continued, everyone, next week. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but there has to be a red line somewhere where we're not recording.
Oh, I want to hear.
There has to be a red line, but maybe Karen's going to, you know.
It's really-
There has to be a red line somewhere where we say, okay, if you put my life in jeopardy and my family's life in jeopardy with your actions, so I'm not okay with that. Like you're allowed for, you know, I'm American, freedom of expression, freedom
Yeah.
of gathering. Of course, that's like one of like, you know, the criteria that I grew up with, unfortunately, equally indoctrinated, you know. But if you block highways or you block major ways for like ambulances to act when my kid can't get home from school and I can't reach
Yeah.
her and she literally walked 2 miles and she, you know, like in a new neighborhood because her bus dropped her off randomly, I have a harder time handling that because of the safety issue.
I agree with you, but I think that the protest culture did not start here. Like the part of the reason, wait, are we?
Yeah,
are we
I can
recording?
turn it off.
No, you don't have to. I'm just saying
Oh.
I'm not, I don't know. what
Okay,
do.
I just feel like
Okay.
this is an
Yeah.
important
Okay,
question.
hi. I just want to say that the protest culture did not start recently. The protest, this has been something that over the last like maybe 10 or 15 years, right? Would you say that's accurate? 10 or 15 years has really been building. Like there's a culture of protesting in Israel. And that's good. I don't know. My older kids will be like, oh, these protests, it's so ridiculous, it's such a waste of time because like people go out, they protest and no one notices. And then what we noticed with like the judicial reform and all that was that the protests got like stronger and stronger. Like I remember I had a student who got married and a lot of those protests were like right outside her apartment. And it was like this like newlywed, newly aliyad couple. And they were like, what is this happening here? You know? And like there, that was where, I don't know if that was the first time, but it was the first time that I really paid attention and I started asking those questions, but I don't understand. How do you just like start blocking streets and like what if people are stranded and what if someone needs to like take a medicine and they're like it's going to take them 5 hours to get home and they can't access their medicine, like all these questions. I agree with you. Like I think that a person of the right to self, I'm also American and I also really dig the right to self-expression, but I think that it creates something that is unsafe. Now, what we're going to talk about on Monday, I do want to say, like sneak peek, is I think part of what we're going to talk about is how sometimes when we are, let's say, panicked, we don't usually make wise decisions. And when we are like, when we feel like, if this happens, it would be the worst thing in the world, we usually do not act in a way that is like thinking about the big picture. And I don't care if that's like a fight in the house, if it's something, again, like with kids, you see this all the time, this goes on, right? I don't care if it's left, right, religious, not religious, political, religious, whatever the issue is. And I think that that's part of it. I think that it's like these type of protests usually happen when whoever the protesters are, it gets to a place where they're just like, but if this would happen, actually the world's going to crumble underneath it. That doesn't mean I think it's right. And that doesn't mean I think it's okay. I actually think, if you're asking me personally, I hope I don't get in trouble. I'm having my own opinion here. Yeah, I think no one should be allowed to protest like that. I don't care for what reason, for what, whatever. No. It's just my own opinion. But like, but I think that I can understand. Sorry. I can understand and appreciate it. Also feel blessed that maybe I was never in, like, what if God forbid it was something, I don't know, I'm thinking about something like, I'm sure there's some movie like this, right? Where like some like kid gets like thrown in jail in like a communist country and they're like they just want to like burn the whole city down. They want to go to the White House so that and burn the, was this ever a movie? I don't know. But like burn down the White House so that the president gets their kid out of that scary country. Like
That's the whole point. The whole point is to make it dangerous and to make it disruptive and to that people we need to pay attention.
Right,
That's all of the protest.
right.
Right, so when we protested in the Soviet Union, does anyone
Oh,
remember that?
yes.
So first of all, so it made a difference. I know it made a difference because I remember Rabbi Tights used to have to come out and say, don't go to the protests because because he went on many missions to the Soviet Union and did tons of great things. And it was a lot of the time they would look the other way and let him do whatever he wanted to do as in exchange for him saying that don't go to the protest.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Anyway, but the point is he had to say that because the protests really did do anything. But it was always like there were police and it was and when Rabbi what's his name, Avi Weiss or whoever was did civil disobedience, it was he sat down in the street and they picked him up and arrested him, and that was it. So there's no in other words, and it made the news. There was no reason to burn garbage and to keep people ambulances from going. We went tons of people, thousands of people were in the streets of New York, and we weren't blocked, and we made the news.
That's America. You in Israel, you have you bigger.
Yeah,
Next level.
yeah, next level. Like, right, the culture
And the
here
cops
is
changed it
different.
out burning garbage, and then we made the news, and we made
Right.
the Soviet news, and this was before WhatsApp,
Right, but I think we know that the world today, it's like a more extreme, like everything is extreme.
Temperatures higher, like in every.
Temperatures higher in every way, and also I think that there's
Communication is over the fact.
right, and there's no nuance and there's no subtlety.
And everyone knows about it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So again, I'm not saying this in an apologetic way. I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. I wish that there was some magic pixie dust that I don't know, that could make it like a lasso around everyone and just move them over and just, and again, for any reason. But this is sort of where I started with that the idea of, but if it was the thing that was most deep, if I really thought it was an emergency,
Almost finished.
I think it's complicated.
About 10 minutes.
but I think it could be wrong and complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
For that part.
Everybody, thank you. Yeah.
Letting me record.
We're